Well, good evening, everybody. Glad you could be here with us again. And for those who couldn't make it, please check us out on the YouTube channel, Gayatri Das at YouTube. We appreciate you coming on and reviewing the material with us. This is the last chapter. This is chapter 10 in Canto 7. This would be the end of 9 or 10 chapters that we've read in regards to Prahlad Maharaj, and it started way, way back where it talked about Prahlad Maharaj, the king of the demons, Hiranyakashipu's plan to become immortal. We talked about that, what he did. We talked about how he terrorized the entire universe. We talked about Prahlad, how he was preaching what a saintly son he was to Hiranyakashipu, how he instructed his demoniac schoolmates. You might remember that. We also learned how he learned this philosophy in the womb. And you remember that part. And then Lord Nrsingadev comes for a visit and slays the great demon Hiranyakashipu. We just read that. And then Prahlad, he pacified Nrsingadev with prayers. And now the last chapter, chapter 10, is Prahlad, the best among the exalted devotees. So that is what this chapter is about. And what we're going to do is start with text 1, and then we're going to pass this thing around, okay? First, we'll do pranams. Everybody chant with me. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Putale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devim Gaudavani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shinyavari Pastyachari Shatarane Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Pramanichananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gauda Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram, Ram Ram, Hari Hari. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Haribo. So this is the last installment on this chapter. Please join in. I'll start with text 1 and read. How many were there tonight? I think there's 48 that we'll be reading. And then there's another addendum at the end of the chapter, which is another story. We may not read that. So I'll start with text 1, and I'll read 7 or 8, and we'll pass it around. The Saint Narada Muni continued. Although Prahlad Maharaj was only a boy, when he heard the benedictions offered by Lord Nrsingadev, he considered them impediments on the path of devotional service. Thus he smiled very mildly and spoke as follows. Prahlad Maharaj said, "My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, because I was born in an atheistic family, I am naturally attached to material enjoyment. Therefore, kindly do not tempt me with these illusions. I am very much afraid of material conditions, and I desire to become liberated from materialistic life. It is for this reason that I have taken shelter of your lotus feet. O my worshipful Lord, because the seed of lusty desires, which is the root cause of material existence, is within the core of everyone's heart. You have sent me to this material world to exhibit the symptoms of a pure devotee. Otherwise, O my Lord, O Supreme Instructor of the entire world, you are so kind to your devotee that you could not induce him to do something unbeneficial for him. On the other hand, one who desires some material benefit in exchange for devotional service cannot be your pure devotee. Indeed, he is no better than a merchant who wants profit in exchange for service. A servant who desires material profits from his master is certainly not a qualified servant or a pure devotee. Similarly, a master who bestows benedictions upon his servant because of a desire to maintain a prestigious position as a master is also not a pure master. Oh, my Lord, I am your unmotivated servant, and you are my eternal master. There is no need of our being anything other than master and servant. You are naturally my master, and I am naturally your servant. We have no other relationship. O my Lord, best of the givers of benediction, if you at all want to bestow a desirable benediction upon me, then I pray from your lordship that within the core of my heart there be no material desires. O my Lord, because of lusty desires from the very beginning of one's birth, the functions of one's senses, mind, life, body, religion, patience, intelligence, shyness, opulence, strength, memory, and truthfulness are all vanquished. O my Lord, when a human being is able to give up all these material desires in his mind, he becomes eligible to possess wealth and opulence like yours. All right, who would like to pick it up there? Somebody grab it. It's text 9 that I just read. So you'd
text
start
10, right?
Text 10, that's correct.
Okay. Oh my Lord, full of this, O Supreme Person, O Supreme Soul, killer of all miseries, O Supreme Person in the form of a wonderful lion and a man, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Prahlada, a devotee like you never desires any kind of material opulences, either in this life or in the next. Nonetheless, I order you to enjoy the opulences of the demon in this material world, acting as their king until the end of the duration of time occupied by Manu. It does not matter that you are in the material world. You should always continuously hear the instructions and messages given by me and always be absorbed in the thought of me. For I am the super soul existing in the core of everyone's heart. Therefore, give enough fruitive activities and worship me. My dear Prahlada, while you are in this material world, you will exhaust all the reactions of pious activity by feeling happiness, and by acting piously, you will neutralize impious activity. Because of the powerful time factor, you will give up your body, but the glories of your activities will be sung in the upper planetary systems, and being fully freed from all bondage, will return home back to Godhead. One who always remembers your activities and my activities also, and one who chants the prayers you have offered, becomes free in due course of time from the reactions of material activities. Prahlada Maharaj said, O Supreme Lord, because you are so merciful to the fallen souls, I ask you for only one benediction. I know that my father, at the time of his death, had already been purified by your glance upon him. But because of his ignorance of your beautiful power and supremacy, he was unnecessarily angry at you, falsely thinking that you were the killer of his brother. Thus he directly blasphemed your lordships, the spiritual master of all living beings, and committed heavily sinful activities directed against me, your devotee. I wish he could be excused for these sinful activities. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Oh dear Prahlad, O most pure, O saintly person, your father has been purified along with 21 forefathers in your family. Because you were born in his family, the entire dynasty has been purified. Whenever and wherever there are peaceful, equipus devotees who are well behaved and decorated with all good qualities, that place in the dynasty is there, even if condemned, are purified. I'll stop there.
Yep, that's good. Thank you. And who else would like to pick it up at 20?
I can read from 20.
Thank you.
My dear Prahlad, king of the Daityas, because of being attached to devotional service to me, my devotee does not distinguish between lower and higher living entities. In all respects, he is never jealous of anyone. Those who follow your example will naturally become my pure devotees. You are the best example of my devotee, and others should follow in your footsteps. My dear child, your father has already been purified just by the touch of my body at the time of his death. Nonetheless, the duty of a son is to perform the Shraddha ritualistic ceremony after his father's death, so that his father may be promoted to a planetary system where he may become a good citizen and devotee. After performing the ritualistic ceremonies, take charge of your father's kingdom. Sit upon the throne and do not be disturbed by materialistic activities. Please keep your mind fixed upon me. Without transgressing the injunctions of the Vedas, as a matter of formality, you may perform your particular duties. Sri Narada Muni continued, Thus, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead ordered, Prahlad Maharaj performed the ritualistic ceremonies for his father. O King Yudhishthir, he was then enthroned in the kingdom of Hiranyakashipu as directed by the Brahmanas. Lord Brahma, surrounded by the other demigods, was bright-faced because the Lord was pleased. Thus he offered prayers to the Lord with transcendental words. Lord Brahma said, O Supreme Lord of all lords, proprietor of the entire universe, O benedictor of all living entities, O original person, Adi Purusha, because of our good fortune, you have now killed this sinful demon who was giving trouble to the entire universe. This demon, Hiranyakashipu, received from me the benediction that he would not be killed by any living being within my creation. With this assurance and with strength derived from austerities and mystic power, he became excessively proud and transgressed all the Vedic injunctions. By great fortune, Hiranyakashipu's son, Prahlad Maharaj, has now been released from death. So, although he is a child, he is an exalted devotee. Now he is fully under the protection of your lotus feet. My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, you are the Supreme Soul. If one meditates upon your transcendental body, you naturally protect him from all sources of fear, even the imminent danger of death. So I'll stop there.
That'll be fine if somebody wants to pick up. Say another 8 or 9 verses.
Okay, I can continue.
Okay.
Prahlad Maharaj then worshipped and offered prayers to all the demigods such as Brahma, Shiva. Actually, am I starting on the right one?
I don't know. Which one did you start on? I went
I
ahead.
started on 32.
No, it's 10:30.
30. Okay, thank you. The personality of Godhead replied, My dear Lord Brahma, O great Lord, born from the lotus flower, just as it is dangerous to feed milk to a snake, so it is dangerous to give benedictions to demons, who are by nature ferocious and jealous. I warn you not to give benedictions to any demon again. Narada Muni continued, O King Yudhisthira, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is not visible to an ordinary
Excuse me
human.
one moment. Whoever has the Galaxy A34, just press mute if you don't mind. Here you go. I think that's better. Sorry.
It's better. Thank you, Prabhu. I'll start that one again. Narada Muni continued, O King Yudhisthira, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is not visible to an ordinary human being, spoke in this way, instructing Lord Brahma. Then, being worshipped by Brahma, the Lord disappeared from that place.
I'm sorry, we're still getting that feedback. Can the administrator just mute that microphone?
Let me do that. I think I could do that. I'll go ahead and mute that. Okay.
There you go.
Yep.
So we're on 32.
Right.
Prahlad Maharaj then worshipped and offered prayers to all the demigods, such as Brahma, Shiva, and the Prajapatis, who were all parts of the Lord. Thereafter, along with Sukacharya and other great saints, Lord Brahma, whose seat is on the lotus flower, made Prahlad the king of all the demons and giants in the universe. Giants as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
O King Yudhisthira, after all the demigods headed by Lord Brahma were properly worshipped by Prahlad Maharaj, they offered Prahlad their utmost benedictions and then returned to their respective abodes. Thus the two associates of Lord Vishnu, who had become Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, the sons of Diti, were both killed. By illusion, they had thought that the Supreme Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart, was their enemy. Being cursed by the Brahmanas, the same two associates took birth again as Kumbhakarna and the 10-headed Ravana. These two Rakshasas were killed by Lord Ramachandra's extraordinary power. Pierced by the arrows of Lord Ramachandra, both Kumbhakarna and Ravana lay on the ground and left their bodies, fully absorbed in thought of the Lord, just as they had in their previous births as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. They both took birth again in human society as Sishupal and Dantavakra. and continued in the same enmity towards the Lord. It is they who merged into the body of the Lord in your presence. Not only Sishapal and Dantavraka, but also many other kings who acted as enemies of Krishna attained salvation at the time of death. Because they thought of the Lord, they received spiritual bodies and forms the same as he, just as worms captured by the black drone obtain the same type of body as the drone. Okay.
Okay. All right. Who wants to pick up there?
I can read.
Oh, very nice.
Okay. Text 40. By devotional service, pure devotees who incessantly think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead receive bodies similar to his. This is known as Shupya Mukti. Although Shishupal, Dantavakra, and other kings thought of Krishna as an enemy, they also achieved the same result. Everything you ask me about how Shishupal and others attained salvation, although they were inimical, has now been explained to you by me. In this narration about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, various expansions or incarnations of the Lord have been described, and the killing of the two demons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, has also been described. This narration describes the characteristics of the great and exalted devotee Prahlada Maharaj. His staunch devotional service, his perfect knowledge, and his perfect detachment from material contamination. It also describes the Supreme Personality of Godhead as the cause of creation, maintenance, and annihilation. Prahlada Maharaj, in his prayers, has described the transcendental qualities of the Lord and has also described how the various abodes of the demigods and demons, regardless of how materially opulent, are destroyed by the mere direction of the Lord. The principles of religion by which one can actually understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are called Bhagavatam Dharma. In this narration, therefore, which deals with these principles, actual transcendence is properly described. One who hears and chants this narration about the omnipotence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, is certainly liberated from material bondage without fail. Prahlada Maharaj was the best among exalted devotees. Anyone who with great attention hears this narration concerning the activities of Prahlada Maharaj, the killing of Hiranyakashipu, and the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Nrsimhadev, surely reaches the spiritual world where there is no anxiety. Hare Krishna.
Okay, there's a few more that we can read. If anybody wants to grab these last few, we're going to stop, I think, on 50 because it goes into a different story at that time. So we've only got a couple more to go. So if that's the case, does anybody want to grab these last couple, 2 or 3? I can do it. Narada Muni continued, my dear Maharaj Yudhisthira, all of you, the Pandavas, are extremely fortunate, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, lives in your palace just like a human being. Great saintly persons know this very well, and therefore they are constantly visit this house. Impersonal Brahman is Krishna himself, because Krishna is the source of the impersonal Brahman. He is the origin of the transcendental bliss sought by great saintly persons, yet he, Supreme Person, is your most dear friend and constant well-wisher, and is intimately related to you as the son of your maternal uncle. Indeed, he is always like your body and soul. He is worshipable, yet he acts as your servant and sometimes as your spiritual master. Exalted persons like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma could not properly describe the truth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. May the Lord, who is always worshipped as the protector of all devotees by great saints who observe vows of silence, meditation, devotional service, and renunciation, be pleased with us. So, starting on text 51 is the story of the interaction of Maya Danava. He was a demon. And I don't know that we'll read that, but if you'd like, I can just kind of encapsulate that for you real quick, just so we'll have a record of it, if you'd like. So Maya Danava was approached by the demons, right? And he gave the demons 3 vimanas, residential vimanas, iron, silver, and gold, these ships. And they were invisible. And so by their invisibility, they were defeating the demigods. And so the demigods approached Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva said, "Do not fear." He immediately took his bow and arrows and destroyed the 3 vimanas. But what had happened was basically is that Shiva, because they were winning with the demigods, he actually got his bow, he got his armor, he got his arrows and everything from Krishna, from Vishnu. So he used those to defeat them. And because there were 3 vimanas that he destroyed, he got his name, which is famous, of Tripurari. It's an interesting story. So he's called Tripurari because he was able to destroy those 3 vimanas of the demons. So does anybody want to add anything to that story? I mean, we could read it if you'd like, or we can just kind of recap this chapter. I think what we're going to do is stay probably without going to another story. We'll probably just recap if that's all right with you guys. Okay. So any questions about this chapter? Any questions or comments or any elucidations that you have that you'd like to offer? Anybody? Or we'll just kind of recap it. Ram Raghava, you got anything you want to add? There's Vamsi. Haribo, Vamsi.
Krishna, Dandavat Pranam.
Yeah. So we can start going back over this, and you guys just chime in if you'd like to, if you hear something here that stimulates you, because there's so much here that we could go over in this chapter. This is the final chapter, again, of this whole saga that has been going on with Hiranyakashipu, king of the demons there. And we're at the very last bit of that. So Prahlada is the best amongst the exalted devotees. And he said he was born in the family of an atheist. So he was naturally inclined to material enjoyment. Now, a little later on in the chapter, he says that he believes that the Lord put him into this family of demons as a pure devotee, because the Lord would never do anything that's derogatory or detrimental to the devotee. And he did that just for the purification, improvement of his whole family. And that's what happened, because I believe it was 21 generations prior were all liberated. So wherever the Lord goes, whatever he does, everyone is purified. He even asked, he said, Prahlada had 3 actual requests of the Lord. And but before I jump ahead, let's just go back through some of this stuff. So Prahlada says that he's naturally inclined to material and sense enjoyment. So he said, please do not, in his prayer, he said, please do not tempt me with these illusions. Have you ever felt that way? You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like I was talking to a god brother of mine, Chandrasekhar, and he was going, I need to go home back to Godhead at the end of this life. I don't want to come back. I'd like to come back and serve Prabhupada, but I'm tempted by the illusions in the material world. And to go again as a young man and have to go through all of that could be very, very difficult. Could be very difficult, a young woman or man. And so therefore, Prahlad Maharaj's prayer would be a prayer like the one me and my God brothers would pray, which is, please don't tempt us with these illusions, because we're naturally, in the core of our heart, we have lusty desires. And so those lusty desires are in the cores of everyone's heart, actually. So that brings to mind something that I was going to share with you, but let me do this first. Let's see if I can find what I had for you. Oh, this is something that I wanted to bring up at this particular point. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Madhya Lila, in the 22nd chapter, he describes devotional service. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, from his own mouth, is describing. So he says, now I shall speak to you about the characteristics of devotional service by which one can attain the shelter of Krishna and his loving transcendental service. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes on. It's almost like hearing Prahlad again, because what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying is just like what Prahlad says later in this chapter. He says, Lord Chaitanya says, a human being's activity should be centered only on devotional service to Krishna. And that's not only the verdict of all the Vedic literatures, but of all the saintly people. And everyone has concluded this. And we know that Prahlad Maharaj has concluded this as well. So when we go on, he says, Krishna expands himself into many forms. Some of them are personal expansions and some are separate expansions. Thus, he performs pastimes in both the spiritual and the material worlds. The spiritual worlds are the Vaikuntha planets. Material worlds are the Brahmandas, or gigantic globes governed by Brahmas. So expansions of his personal self, like quadruple manifestations, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Vasudeva, descend as incarnations from Vaikuntha, the material world. The separated expansions are the living entities like us. Although they are expansions of Krishna, they are counted among his different potencies. So there are two types of living entities, Lord Chaitanya tells us. One is eternally liberated, Nityasiddha, and the other is Nityabaddha, which is eternally bound, which is not actually eternal. We can go back home, back to Godhead, but material world is also eternal. Time is eternal. So the ones who are Nityasiddha, they're considered to be eternal associates of Krishna, and they are eternally enjoying the transcendental bliss of serving Krishna. So he goes on to say, which this is the part I wanted to particularly read to you, is where he says in text 16, he says, this kind of coincides with what Prahlada is saying. He says, oh, my Lord, there's no limit to the unwanted orders of lusty desires. Although I have rendered these desires so much service, they have not shown any mercy to me. I have not been ashamed to serve them, nor have I even desired to give them up. O my Lord, O head of the Yadu dynasty, recently, however, my intelligence has been awakened, and now I am giving them up. Due to transcendental intelligence, I now refuse to obey these unwanted orders of these desires, and I now come to you to surrender myself at your fearless lotus feet. Kindly engage me in your personal service and save me. So this is a verse that we should write down on the mirror, or maybe across our forehead, or on the inside of your glasses. So when you put your glasses on, you see that verse. Because no matter how hard we've tried to serve our senses, they've never become satisfied. And so Krishna, he also recommends that we do not serve these senses. He says, Indriyanin hicharatam yanmano nibidhiyate tarasya harati pragyam vayur navam ivambasi. As a boat on the water is swept away by a strong wind, even one of the senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. So therefore, if we don't concentrate on Krishna, we're bound to be allured by these illusions in the material world, which are all temporary. And Krishna says the wise do not take part because these pleasures are temporary in nature. So that is the issue, is that these pleasures are not worthy of the soul. The soul is eternal, and it can only be satisfied in connection with that eternal source of love and devotion. So in text 17, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, devotional service to Krishna is the chief function of the living entity. And there are different methods for liberation of the conditioned soul: karma, jnana, yoga, and bhakti. But all of the others are totally dependent on bhakti. Because we've read over and over again in these studies that the only thing that really attracts the mind of the Lord is devotional service. He's not going to be impressed with your knowledge or your strength or your wealth. That's not going to do it. So Krishna says, Yoginam api sarvesham madkatin antaratmana shradavan bhajate yomam same yuktat mato mataha. And of all the yogis, he who always abides in me with great faith, worshiping me in transcendental loving service, is the most intimately united with me in yoga, and that yogi is the highest of all. So there's no question, because Prahlada Maharaj is one of the great Mahajanas, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the incarnation of God directly, and Krishna are all corroborating all these facts that Prahlada Maharaj has been given us over and over and over again. He's given to his childhood friends and students in school as well. And he goes on to say that someone who is simply doing devotional service for profit is simply a merchant. They're simply merchants. They're not really devotees, because they're doing some business with the Lord. And generally speaking, if they don't get what they want, they quit the service. Right? So like if you're at work for someone and the man doesn't pay you, will you continue to work? No. If you're in it for profit and for the money, as soon as the paycheck stops, the work stops. So that's not the relationship that we're looking for with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not at all. As a matter of fact, Prahlada Maharaj says the only relationship that he has with the Lord is that of master and servant. Now, we know that comes in different rasas. We understand that. But the only relationship we have with the energetic, as the energy of God, is to be engaged in the service of the energetic. That's it. There's no other relationship except for servant and master. So the Lord is always our master, and we're always his servant. So what did Prahlad ask for? The first thing he asked for? He asked for no material desire. In other words, if you're going to give me a benediction, give me no material desire. Because when one doesn't want anything in the material world, he becomes eligible to receive everything. I don't know if they call that an oxymoron or paradoxical or whatever, but you know what I mean? When you want something, your misery starts. Your unhappiness begins. As soon as you have a desire separate from Krishna, the pain and suffering begin. Because you're bound to be frustrated again and again and again and again and again. Now, the intelligent, the wise man knows that, so he doesn't endeavor for these things. Instead, he endeavors for only the will of the Lord. What the Lord has given to us in Shastra, Sadhu, Guru, we can understand these are the instructions of the Lord. They actually come from the mouth of God, and one can hear those instructions like we hear from Kapila. We've heard from, all these great incarnations of God, of course, Krishna and Ram. So when you don't want anything is when the Lord sees you as qualified to receive everything. So Prahlad addressed the Lord. I thought it was very, very interesting that Prahlad addressed the Lord as the killer of all miseries. Think about that. I mean, we think of the Lord in so many different ways, but the killer of all miseries. What a wonderful way of viewing the Lord. I hadn't thought of that one until I read this chapter, the killer of all miseries. But it's a fact. We go back home, back to Godhead. There's no anxiety. There's no misery. There's no suffering like that. So the killer of all miseries. And Nrsinga told him, he said, he's ordering him actually to become the king of the demons and sit on the throne of his father and rule over the demons and the giants, as Rangavati pointed out. So a lot of these people are questioning if they were ever giants. Well, here we know. We can see there were giants. There are giants, I'm sure. So he tells him, he said, you rule over the world, but don't become enamored with this material things. And he said, just hear my messages. Concentrate on me. I am the super soul in the core of everyone's heart. So just concentrate on my instructions, and you will exhaust during this time through happiness. You will exhaust all pious reactions, and your piety will neutralize all of your negative reactions. This is coming from Krishna telling him this directly, or Nrsingadev telling him this directly, that this is an order that I'm giving you. So he wants him to do that. And so even though Prahlada didn't care for these things, he did ask for one more benediction. And do you know what that benediction was? What was that benediction? Anybody know?
To give liberation to his father, demonic father?
That's it, exactly. To actually ask his father, he asked for his father's forgiveness. In other words, he didn't ask for any benediction for himself other than no material desires. And then he asked for his father's forgiveness. And the Lord went ahead and explained to him that he's already been excused for all of his sinful activities because he was touched by my body as I put him on my lap to kill him. Because he was touched by the body of the Lord, he was immediately freed of any potential reaction by being killed by the Lord. And all of the demons present had the same blessing. All of them. Same blessing. So he was excused. And 21 forefathers, his entire dynasty had been purified. They're all going back home. And he goes on to say that anywhere there are devotees who are decorated with all good qualities. So when you think about it, when you see a Vaishnava, they're decorated with the beads and the tilak and so many things they have that you can see. But the real decoration is they're decorated with love of God. Their heart is filled with love for God. And therefore, whoever they come in contact with, that spills over and that nectar washes everybody clean, literally, by the chanting of the holy name and by his association with the holy name and association with the Shastra. He's able to become a place of pilgrimage. The devotee is a place of pilgrimage. So if that's the case, then if he's decorated with all these good qualities, and by the way, you can read Bhagavad Gita, it describes what qualities the devotees have. And they're actually pretty long, And so we should study those qualities. And I believe there's 60 processes that you can have to associate with the Lord and develop, but those last few are the ones what Prahlada had recommended: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, and all that. Those, any one of those, can deliver one back to Godhead. So he goes on to say, Nrsingadev goes on to say that Prahlada is the best example of a devotee, and that others should follow him. And that for generations and generations, even though he will ultimately give up his material body to come back home, back to Godhead at the end of that reign of Manu, right? That even though that's the case, his legacy will be spoken of eternally because he has set the perfect example of how we should be acting and what we should be thinking, right? So he told him, he said, fix your mind on me, sit on the throne, and perform the ritualistic rites for your father, right? And he did. And then Brahma it went on to explain, he said that Hiranyakashipu wanted to be not to be killed by anything within his creation or any being within his creation. But Lord Nrsingadev was not within his creation, was he? So that one thing, just that one thing, quelled Hiranyakashipu's intelligence, where he did all those austerities, and when he brought Brahma, he thought he could trick Brahma into giving him immortality. But in this chapter, because we know that he wasn't killed in the day or night, he was killed at the twilight, he wasn't killed inside or outside, he was killed on the lap, he wasn't killed by any weapon, he was killed by the nails of the Lord, right? And he wasn't killed by a man or a beast, he was killed by a half man, half lion. So there's so many things that the Lord not only meant all of those, but here Brahma says that he did not want to be killed by any being within his creation. And thinking thus that he was safe, he transgressed all of the Vedic laws. He didn't care for the laws of the Vedas. He transgressed them all, right? So he went on acting as if he was independent of any law and that he was the law. But apparently he was shown differently by Nrsingadev, right? So Brahma felt comfortable because Brahma felt like now Prahlad Maharaj is under your protection, Lord Nrsingadev. So he then departed for his kingdom of Brahmaloka and disappeared from that site. So, but before he did that, he gave a nice prayer to Nrsingadev. And what did Nrsingadev tell Brahma? Does anybody remember what he told him to do at the end of it all? It was one last instruction.
He said, don't offer benedictions like these again.
He said, giving benedictions of these kind is like giving milk to a snake. It just makes them more venomous. He says, I warn you. He told him, he warned him not to do this again. So Brahma received some chastisement from Nrsingadev before Nrsingadev departed, and some good advice. So the Lord of the universe is not too above being reprimanded by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I thought that was a very interesting thing. He warned him, don't be giving benedictions to demons. Don't do that anymore. Then the Lord disappeared. So, of course, it was an illusion to think, Hiranyakashipu to think that Nrsingadev was his enemy. Actually, he's his dearest friend. And Prahlad had told him that in his prayers at one point. You might remember, he said, the Lord is the greatest friend of not only me, but to you. And my strength comes from the Lord. Because he asked him, where do you get the authority to speak against your father like this? And he said, I get it from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's where my strength comes from. That's where yours comes from. Oh, man, that made Hiranyakashipu really mad. And he wanted to sever the head of his own son. So that's pretty interesting. Now, if you realize, though, that these three births were Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Kumbhakarna, and then Ravana. And then who were the last two demons that these souls, Jaya and Vijaya, took birth as? Anybody know?
Shishupal and Dantavakra.
Correct. So Shishupal and Dantavakra were the last of the three that they took birth, and then they were allowed to go back home, back to Godhead. So they attain their situation. Even the enemies of the Lord attain the same or similar body as the Lord, Sarupa Mukti. So when you have that original form of Swarup Siddhi, that Satchidananda Vigraha, that form is like the Lord's. You have the same quality of the Lord. You have the same body as the Lord. So in that situation, they all attained to that great glory. So, and we know that whatever you remember at the time of death, that's what you're going to get. So they remembered Krishna, yam yam vapi smaram bhavam, tijantan ante kalevaram. You know that verse in Bhagavad Gita 8:6, that whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. So here we're seeing that even the demons, meditating on the Lord, even as an enemy, attained the same body literally as the Lord. And what was Hiranyakashipu trying to do? He was trying to do that in the material world. He was trying to be God in the material world, and it did not work out very well for him, did it? Even all his tricks, right? Even all his tricks, everything he could do, all of his austerity, standing there and the ants are eating him. There's nothing left. He did all those austerities to try to get what Krishna gave him simply by the touch of his nails, which was this mukti, this freedom to have the body of the Lord by being killed by God. He attained all of those things. All he had to do was engage in devotional service in the beginning. And he could have had all the things that he was trying to get from Brahma anyway. So I thought that was very interesting. And then, so Narada Muni has literally given all of this information of Bhagavad Dharma, and Prahlada Maharaj has repeated it in his wonderful prayers. And so transcendence, the transcendent nature of not only the soul, the supreme soul, God, spiritual world, all of that transcendence is being properly described in this chapter. Properly described. So much so that the Lord was very, very pleased and wants us all to follow in the footsteps of Prahlada Maharaj. So that's very, very good. And the story itself is so purifying that anyone who simply chants this story, recites this story, just remembers this story, or even hears this narration, is liberated from material bondage. Liberated from material bondage, that's number one. And number two, surely reaches the spiritual world. Surely reaches the spiritual world. That's a strong promise, guys. I don't know where you think you can get that. You can't buy that at the 5 and dime. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to get it at Walgreens or Walmart. I promise you. You're going to have to go to the great Mahajanas like Prahlada Maharaj to get this kind of liberation from suffering, from the killer of all miseries, which I thought was a pretty profound statement. So when he was talking about this to the Pandavas, he was saying that the Krishna lives in the Pandavas' palace. So how wonderful is that? That Krishna himself is there in the palace, and he's acting as their servant in many cases, and sometimes he's acting as their spiritual master. Sometimes he's acting as their spiritual master. So this is how God will do. He will come for his devotees. He will protect his devotees. There's no fear. And he will come, and even in the position of servant, just like he was Arjuna's chariot driver. So when we see that Krishna is fulfilling all our desires since time immemorial. He's the self-sufficient filler of all desires since time immemorial. So Krishna has a love for us that we really cannot truly understand. So in 1154, Krishna gives us the in my opinion, the final conclusion of what he wants. And it's the same thing Prahlada Maharaj wants, the same thing that Narada Muni's been preaching. It's the same thing the Pandavas were giving Krishna. It's the same thing we see with the gopis. It's the same thing we see throughout the whole, various incarnations of God who are coming and giving these lessons to people who started out in some cases wanting something material and ultimately ended up getting the greatest benefit. And that is Bhaktya Twan Anyayasakya Aham Me vam vidorjuna gantum drastum chitatvena pravestum cha parantapa. So only by undivided devotional service can the Lord be understood as he is, standing before you, and thus he can be seen directly. Only in this way could you ever enter into the mysteries of his understanding. Not through jnana, not through karma, not through Ashtanga yoga. It's through bhakti yoga. And all those paths lead one to bhakti. The whole Vedas is, Krishna says, by all the Vedas I am to be known. So to be known means to understand his purpose. What is Krishna's purpose? Prabhupada said at one point, he said, why has God become many? He's one without a second. Think about it. But why has he become many? He asked this question 2 or 3 different times. He said, why has he become many? This is for you to know. This is for you to find out. Why has he become many? And the answer is for the sake of rasa, for the sake of this relationship, this loving devotion that we can share together, which is the highest high and the greatest happiness that we could ever hope for. So that concludes the study of Prahlad Maharaj and Nrsingadev, one of the most wonderful stories of all in the Vedas. And does anybody have any questions or comments they want to add to that? Otherwise, we're going to be finishing pretty early tonight. What do you think about that? You didn't think I could do it, did you? I'm showing you. You didn't think I could do it. You're thinking, I'm going to have to check out. Gayatri will be here another 30, 40 minutes. But I purposely did not
Can I
do
ask
that
a question? Yes. I'm sorry.
What? I didn't do that to you tonight. So, but what's your question?
Well, yeah, it's not so spiritually profound. I'm just curious about it's mentioned there about the giants. Does it say anywhere where giants existed? Or is it in this planet or other planets?
If you look at the
well,
purport, there is
yeah,
nothing in the purport about giants.
there
Prabhupada
is
did
or
not
isn't?
elaborate. He didn't
You
elaborate.
said, oh, okay, because somewhere in this earth, I think it's the island of Crete, there was giants living there. I'm just wondering if that was the same reference.
Well, everything is relative first and foremost, and we know that. I mean, just like the life of Brahma's 3.11 trillion years, and ours is maybe 90, or 100. That's number one. The other thing is that certainly, since everything is relative, giants would exist. We know that in the story of Krishna, that even Putna witch, when she died, she became, what was it, 8 miles long or something in her demoniac form, and that happened to several demons that we see in the stories of pastimes of the Lord. So, and there are also mystic siddhas like Lahiman, Mahiman, all that, where you can be larger than the largest, smaller than the smallest. So it's not fantastic to think that these things are possible. We see those things being demonstrated throughout the Puranas. So, but as far as the giants, now in the material world, there is some anthropological evidence or possible evidence where they found skeletons or bones or remains. And we know that in India, in Jaipur, king of Jaipur had a sword, what was it, 7 or 8 feet tall? What I mean? I mean, he's wielding this sword that you couldn't even pick up with 5 guys, right? So yes, there are stories of people like that. And even in the Bible, it talks about the giant Goliath. So we can pull on some of those stories and some of those histories as well if we want to. And I'm sure if somebody would simply go to Phonipedia or to something and do a search, there might be some additional information we could find out about giants if you're interested in that topic. What do you think, Raghavan? Did I miss anything on that one?
I was just looking through the Veda base, searching for giants.
That's what we need. We got to have our research people going when these good questions come up. So yeah, but there's several things there for you already that just come logically to mind, when you think about that. Okay, so any other questions or any other elucidations or comments anybody wants to make on this? Because the next thing we're going to be doing is going to the 8th canto. Yeah, man, we're cruising right through it. But when we get to the 10th canto, it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while. I've forgotten how many chapters there are in the 10th canto. What are there, 80 chapters or something like that? Does anybody know? It's a lot of chapters. And all of them are just primary in importance, especially in Krishna's later activities in Dwarka, which a lot of times we didn't study so much back when I was living in the ashram. But to study it now is incredible, because he killed all these armies that were brought after Rukmi, kept inciting these various demons, kings of the demons, and bringing their tribes to fight Krishna. In some cases, when Krishna, he was kind of boring, he was kind of tiring of it. One night, these demons are coming, hordes of demons, and they're coming, and they're going to attack Dwarka. And Krishna just goes out in his nightgown and just kills them all himself. He just kills them all. He'd kind of gotten tired of doing it over and over and over. But this is the problem. The demoniac want to do away with God. They want to be God. They see God as a challenger. They see God as someone who's trying to knock them off the top of the hill. They want to be the most beautiful, the most wise, the most wealthy, famous, and powerful person. And they want to be seen as the most, charitable and humble and this and that. When in reality, it's all fake. It's all meant for their own self-aggrandizement. Just like Prahlada was saying, that people who are doing business with the Lord, it's not devotion. That's not real devotion. That's a business deal. So any other thoughts or comments on this? Because, I can go. We can keep going.
I was going to mention, in Krishna book, which is a summary study of the 10th canto, there are 89 chapters.
That's what it is. Yeah, I said there must be 80 or something. Yeah, but 89 chapters. That is serious, guys. And those last chapters, a lot of times we never got to that in our study. We never kind of got to those different chapters. And I can tell you that they are mesmerizing in Krishna's pastime. So,
One other thing I wanted to say was, how we read about the 12 Mahajanas? In the 6th canto, they mentioned 12 Mahajanas.
Yep.
I think it was Yamaraj mentions 12 Mahajanas, including himself. In one of the purports in this chapter, in text 21 in the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions those 12 Mahajanas, and then he goes on to say that of the 12 authorized devotees, Lord Brahma, Narada, Lord Shiva, Kapila, Manu, and so on, Prahlad Maharaj is understood to be the best example. I thought that was amazing. Out of the 12.
Well, that's what he says. That's what Nrsingadev actually said to Prahlad. He said, I see you as the best devotee, and that everyone should definitely follow in your footsteps. So this is very important. This is why this is one of the most pivotal stories in the entire Bhagavatam, in my estimation, Prabhupada's estimation, that this story and this life of Prahlad should be seen. Because what did they do to Prahlad? Look what they did to Prahlad. They tried to crush him with boulders. They tried to burn him with fire. They tried to kill him with weapons. They couldn't do that. They threw him off mountains. Just horrific stuff. Horrific stuff. And he stayed very peaceful. Even in the Bible, it talks about Daniel in the lion's den. They threw this devotee into the lion's den. The lion didn't attack because he was being protected by the Lord. There's another story in the Bible about Meshach, and Abednego, where they were thrown into the fiery furnace, and they came out unscathed. They came out unscathed because of their devotion to the Lord. So when you see what happened to Lord Jesus Christ, how he was persecuted for simply bringing love of God. I mean, he was offenseless. Prabhupada said he was completely offenseless. Yet they killed him, or wanted to kill him, because they were envious of him, King of the Jews. And he was a threat to those in power who were trying to hold on to their power, including the class of priests who were very much like the Smarta Brahmins. In other words, they were trying to hold on to power so that they could use it for money and get more power and more money in that way. And we've seen the church abuse those privileges over and over and over again with innocent people. So Prahlada was against all that. And he's the best example of devotee, and we've spent 10 chapters on him. So what we want to do with this stuff is we want to put it in a small booklet if we can, and have that as like a table book where people could just pick up the story of Prahlada and read that simplistically, in a smaller version. Because to go, find it in the Srimad Bhagavatam and stuff can be a little bit intimidating. So we're trying to make these stories simple and understandable to the regular people, and disseminate this information widely. That would be the idea. So anything you can do in that effort to help us do that, we are very grateful. So anything else anybody wants to add?
Do you think God is a jealous God?
There you are. Hare Krishna. How are you doing,
Hare
Sue Davy?
Krishna.
That's Sue Davy. Sue Davy's new name is Galaxy A345G. You need to get your name posted so we'll know you're here. Thank you for coming.
Yes.
And
Yes. Do you think God is jealous?
Well, let me ask you first, are you coming to us from Guyana?
Yes, I'm coming from Guyana.
Oh, okay. So we have an international audience tonight. We've got Jai Krishna.
Yes, definitely.
Look at that. Of course, Ram Raghava, he's in the spiritual sky, so he's definitely coming to us from long distance. Well, God is a jealous God. In my opinion, this is just saying to you that God loves you. If you betray God, I mean, he doesn't need us, okay? God doesn't need us. We need God. We desperately need God, because everything that we see is coming to us by his mercy, right? By the Lord's mercy. So there's really nothing. He's independent. He's self-sufficient. There's nothing that we have to offer. The only thing that he's attracted to is that devotion. So when you take the devotion away, what do you got to offer the Lord? What have you got? So the idea is in the pastimes of the Lord, when we see the pastimes of Radharani, for an example, with Krishna, she's very jealous. She's very jealous. She's always chasing Krishna down, giving him a hard way to go, for his his various activities. And she's very jealous. So yeah, there is such a thing as transcendental jealousy. Yes. I don't think it's mundane. I don't think
Yes, it is.
Yeah. It's not based in lust. It's not based in yeah.
Actually, that is why Krishna says, anything you eat or drink, offer to me, because in the material world, whatever you took, anything you eat, anything you drink, it becomes an argument to the spiritual soul.
Yeah, he said, really, you eat only sin if you eat only items that are unofferable or unoffered to the Lord. Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good point. Yeah. Well, you're right. So does anybody else have a comment on the jealousy of God? What about you, Raga? That's a good question. I would say on a transcendental level, there are many, many pastimes of the Lord. And there are many, many rasas actually as well. Some rasas may be hard for us to understand at this point. Just like we see this enmity where Bhishma wanted to see the Lord bleeding. He wanted to shoot arrows into the body of the Lord and watch the Lord bleed. And that was his pastime with the Lord. So it seems odd maybe to someone who's not in that mood, but for Bhishma, it was an ecstasy. It was an ecstasy. See what I mean? So this jealousy that we might see on a transcendental level with the gopis and Krishna and such, it's an ecstasy. Not like our jealousy, in other words. However, there's a point where Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that once you know the truth, you'll see that everything is created by me and is owned by me. He owns everything, including us. We're expansions of the Lord. So we're definitely parts and parcels of the Lord, and we're owned by the Lord. So he wants us to come home, and he's nudging. He's coming again and again and again in these incarnations that we're reading about to attract us back home, back to Godhead. And in that way, we can be free from all misery, birth, death, old age. Okay?
When I joined this class, you were at Canto 3. Now I'm surprised to hear you're in Canto 8 now. We're going to begin 8 next week, Monday.
That's right. So you've been around a long time. You've been, but we missed you for a while. You moved to the States. You left. You went to New York and then you came back?
Yeah. I think Krishna wanted me here.
He does, yeah. He's got you.
Yes, he says he wants, yeah.
Well, we're glad you're here with us tonight. And guys, with your permission, I am going to go ahead because we're going to be signing off. We're trying to keep this thing down within the hour because normally we regularly go over. And a lot of people just can't stay that long. So we got it down tonight to an hour and 8 minutes.
Hare Krishna. Before you go, I must tell you I enjoy the music, the song that you sing. The words was good, and you put it into country western style. It was really good.
I like all kind of music, but country and western. I'm from Nashville, so that might be a natural for me, you know.
Yes, it is natural, and it's the best.
Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate you listening. That album is now available. There's 4 songs on that, and then Rangavati has been promoting that regularly, so we're very grateful to her. But we're going to have another one released after this. So every few weeks, you're going to be getting more and more songs, and it's going to continue on for months and months and months. You'll see. I mean, we've got so much material. You'll like it.
That is good. Start play a guitar and sing.
I will do that. On your good advice, I will do that.
And your trumpet. Don't forget your trumpet.
We're going to get that trumpet back out. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going into the recording studio in sometime in December, and also in January. We're going to be recording some new albums with our friend Dane here in Nashville. So you're going to be treated to a lot of good music. Okay.
Yeah, you will get. Once you study the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam, you will get words to make songs. So
that's right. Prabhupada said that he told George Harrison, he said, I'll give you thousands of ideas of songs for you to write for Krishna. It's pretty good. Pretty good. Well, guys, we love you. We appreciate you. Thank you for being with us tonight. We're going to end the call for everybody at this time. And I hope to see you again, Sudevi, on the next one, okay?
Sure. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, everybody. See you next time.